Hey, welcome back to video 2 of the revisited small circle technique. Remember to be a good listener because hidden somewhere in this video is your chance to pause and get your second good listener star. If this were a video game, you've now made it to level 4. Level 4 is worth 30 points. And it has to do with controlling the pressure of your hand to create 6 different levels of saturation. Notice how it goes from light, medium, to dark. But no two boxes look alike. Follow along so that I can teach you how to create 6 different values. Get out either your red or red-orange colored pencil. And I'm going to go ahead and put down a finished example next to this one so that we know what the goal is. Miss Rochelle, what are these numbers next to the boxes? The numbers represent how many layers need to go in each box. So 0 means nothing is going to go in there. 1 means that one extremely light layer of small circles goes into this box. Look, you can barely even see the red because it is so light. Ms. Rochelle, how do we hold the colored pencil to make sure we're representing a light pressure? Hold it either by the middle or the back. I want you to gently lay in some circles to where it's almost transparent, barely showing up on the page. This is level 1 pressure. Two means that we're going to do 2 level 1s. So just do what you did earlier. Lay in 1 gentle layer to make it match box number 1. Be sure to circle the opposite direction. Mix and match up your clockwise and counterclockwise circles. Now my 1 and 2 match because they both have 1 layer. This box needs 2 layers, so I'm going to add 1 more gentle layer over this. Box 2 is now getting 2 gentle layers. Keeping it light. See, I'm holding it by the back or the middle. We're not ready for this heavy stuff yet. You should be keeping it nice and light. So now box 2 is slightly more saturated than box 1. Miss Rochelle, I'm struggling and I'd like to start over again. Instead of erasing, because that ruins the texture of your paper, if you want to try these over again, you can draw more boxes out to the side, which is why I left this empty space. And absolutely, you can try this over again over on the right. Box 3 now needs 1, 2, 3 level 1. So laying in a level 1 pressure. You know that you're doing very well and consistent if box 3 perfectly matches box 1 for layer 1. So now 3 matches 1 because it has only 1 layer in it. Let's make 3 match box 2 by adding a second layer. If you find that your boxes are coming out patchy, that means that you need to do different ways, like clockwise and counterclockwise, and you might need to be doing your circles smaller. Now, box 3 matches box 2 because it only has 2 layers in it. Let's go ahead and put our 3rd layer in it, which is going to make box 3 look slightly more saturated, or some people might say it looks darker than box 2. I'm not getting carried away because I'm not ready for that heavy pressure yet. I just want to bring it to where it looks slightly different than box 2. And these now match, so we're good. Box 4 needs 4 layers, laying in my first gentle layer. Clockwise, then counterclockwise, interlocking these small circles together. I have layer 1 going into layer 2 now. Now my layer 2s look alike. I'm going to make 4 look like 3 with a layer 3. Spending time smearing the pigment off the colored pencil into the paper to make them match. Now that 3 and 4 look alike, I'm going to move my hand up closer, not like I'm going to write something, but just more closer to the end of the colored pencil so I can get some more pressure and lay in a 4th layer. Because I want 4 to be more saturated than 3. When it comes to 5, I can start out at a 2 instead of a 1. So I'm going to change my pressure up for this first layer and go a bit darker because I can get away with it. This is only whenever you're getting into that heavy pressure. We're prepping the surface for a more even application. So I always want to lay in something first. So I've laid in some pigment first. Now I want 5 to be more saturated, or for it to look a bit darker than 4. I'm moving my hand closer to the front of the colored pencil so I can get more pressure. Keeping my circles, I'm not doing sweeps. I'm absolutely, if I see sweeps on your page, I'm just gonna have you come over and do it over again. Everything has to be done in small circles. I have a 5 and time for the 6. I'll lay in a layer. It doesn't have to be as light as level 1. Then I'm going to think of pressure that is so heavy that I could almost punch a hole through the paper. That's how heavy level 6 is. So it's like as if I'm trying to punch a hole through the paper. Then I want to do this thing that I call balance. Do any of my boxes look a little too much alike? If so, I'll balance them out at this time. So I'm thinking that this is too big of a jump between 5 and 6, so I'll balance out 5 a little more by adding a bit more pressure into it, but definitely not as much as 6. I just don't want there to be that big of a jump between. Miss Rochelle, why can't we practice sweeps? We can't practice sweeps on this project because it keeps you from growing. Here's what I mean. We're about to do our first fade, and doing sweeps are going to cause contrast lines. I'll show you an example. This is an example of a very good fade done with the small circle technique. You can't tell where the 6 ends and the 5 begins, where the 5 ends and the 4 begins. There's no scratchiness about it. Whenever you do sweeps though, it causes these things called contrast lines. See this distracting area between the 6 and the 5? And yet another distracting area between the 5 and the 4. And last but not least, a distracting area between the 1 and the 0. Over here, here's an example of another good fade done with the small circle technique, little to no contrast happening. Here though, distracting contrast line, another distracting contrast line, and here as well between the 1 and the 0. We want our viewers to look at our work and see it for what it is. We don't want our viewers to look at our art and get distracted by areas. Have your red or red-orange colored pencil ready. We're going to do our first vertical fade. Vertical means that it's going either down to up or up to down. Don't put anything in the 0 area, but I want you to fill this entire bar up with level 1 pressure. You can do it with me. Oh, so gentle. Laying in level 1 to prep the surface for a more complex fade. Taking our time. Think, is this as light as this level 1? Because these need to be matching. Level 1 pressure. I call this the powder layer because it's like a thin amount of powder. It may not even be showing up on the camera. That's how gentle and thin it is. It preps the paper for a more complex fade so that it will look more professional when we do lay in this vertical. Now I have a nice gentle level 1 powder layer everywhere but the 0. Time for our vertical fade. Here's the finished example of what we need to be doing. Here's the example of what we should not be doing. You can either do your best to fade from light to heavy. I like to fade heavy to light. Either way, whichever way gets you to this result is fine. Use your small circle technique. I'm going to start off with level 6 heavy pressure. My 6s need to match each other. Level 6 heavy pressure. This is so heavy that it's like as if I'm punching a hole through the paper. Then I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue on, except adjust my pressure into a 5. Because if I stop, then that's going to create a contrast line. Then I can blur back into the 6, making sure there's no contrast line. Be sure to go clockwise, counterclockwise, change those directions up. Blur the 5 into the 6 and then blur up, adjusting your pressure into a lighter one, into the 4. Blurring down into the 5, sometimes blurring back down into the 6 and then blurring up. You can check yourself. Do your 5s match? I could probably go a bit darker on my 5. Do your 4s match? I can probably go a bit darker here as well. So blurring, balancing, and adjusting my fade. Blurring into a lighter pressure, medium pressure, level 3. When I get into this 2, I need to adjust the position of my hand on this color pencil. 2. And I can leave the 1 alone because I've already added a level 1 in that area. I'm just ever so gently making the 2 slightly darker without these abrupt lines. Now I want to make some adjustments. I can make these areas a bit heavier. We want to create a vertical fade where things became more saturated at the bottom of the paper and they were lighter or more desaturated at the top of the paper. Miss Rochelle, I'm struggling. Should I erase a whole bunch? No, I don't want you to erase or get in the habit of erasing things. I've left plenty of room over here to try it over. And if you want to try it over yet again, if you're still struggling, that's fine. Struggling means that we're learning, that we're about to grow. You have so many spaces to do another attempt at this level 4. Look in your pack of color pencils for your blue. If you happen to have two blues in your pack, choose the one that is darker. I'm going to slide my paper over. We're going to focus on the horizontal area. I want to give you a warning. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to do your lighter values because this is such a dark color. So be sure when you go into this level 1 pressure that you're holding it by the very, very end. Think back to your layers. We're going to take a break from a fade, go back into doing those layers. 0 means we put nothing there. Hold your blue color pencil by the very end and barely lay down pigment for your level 1 pressure. Remember, clockwise, counterclockwise, change those directions. 2 means adding 2 level 1s, laying down my first layer to make it match the 1. No sweeping allowed. Small circles only, or I'll have you do it over again. Now that 2 matches the 1, I'll lay in 1 more layer. We have to stay in the habit of using small circles because sweeping is going to keep you from doing a proper fade. Now that 2 is slightly more saturated or darker looking than 1, moving into 3. You're being such a good listener, go ahead and quietly raise your hand so that Miss Rachelle or her TA can give you your second good listener star. Now that 3 looks like 2, I'll add 1 more layer. Moving into 4. I want 4 to be slightly more saturated than 3, so I'll move my hand up a bit further towards the middle of the colored pencil. Clockwise, counterclockwise, interlocking those circles, trying to keep this from getting patchy. It is harder to do with a darker colored pencil because all of your mistakes show up better with a darker colored pencil. Now that 4 is more saturated than 3, moving into 5. Laying down a layer doesn't have to be a level 1 pressure because we're in the darker range or the heavier range. I have me down a layer. I'll move my hand up closer to the end to get a heavier pressure, wanting to make sure that 5 gets to be more saturated than 4. Time for 6, laying in like a level 2 or level 3 pressure just to get some pigment on the paper and prep the surface. Here's the part where you have to pretend like you're punching a hole through the paper. That's how heavy level 6 pressure is. I'm not doing sweeps. Don't just sweep it or you're going to get in a bad habit for that fade and you'll have a contrast line. I'm taking my time. And I have a level 6. I'm noticing I can adjust my level 5 a bit more, balance things out. There we go. If you would like to practice this again, I left room underneath. For you to do so. Now that we have a reference for what these numbers need to match, it's time for our first horizontal fade. Vertical went up and down. Horizontal goes left to right or right to left. I'm going to put a finished example of what this horizontal fade needs to look like right underneath it as another reference. Use your blue colored pencil to lay in a level 1 powder layer under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but not the 0. Another reason why students might have contrast lines in their fades is because they did not take the time to prep the surface with a powder layer. Everywhere but the 0 area. Time for our horizontal fade. I'm going to start left to right if you'd like to do the opposite. Whatever is most comfortable for you, as long as it matches this finished example down here. It says no contrast lines. Level 6, heavy pressure. No sweeps. Carrying over my level 6, smearing and blurring the circles around. When I get under the 5, I'll adjust my pressure slightly, smearing and blurring these circles together, constantly changing from clockwise to counterclockwise. When I get into this 4, continuing on, slightly adjusting my pressure. Three, even lighter. 2, really gentle, and I don't even have to do anything under the 1 because I already put down a 1 there. Wow, that's a good fade. It's almost like I've been doing this for years. If you'd like to try your fade over again, there's plenty of room to practice several more times. Hey, you're doing a great job. We're almost done with video 2. And if this were a video game, it's time for level 5. Level 5 is worth 10 points. Get out your red or red-orange colored pencil again for this section. We've learned how to do vertical fades, horizontal fades. It's time to practice something called a diagonal. I have a fade guide here for you. Lay in a level 6 heavy pressure in the 6. Then round it into the 5. Blur it up and over into the 4. Three, 2, 1, and 0. That's a diagonal. Let's do this over again in this circle, creating a level 6 heavy pressure in the bottom right area. It's looking a lot better without that arrow in the way. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Diagonal fade. Notice how you don't see any contrast lines. The only time that I'll ever let you sweep is to add a couple of different shadows to certain parts of projects. If you'd like to take a darker colored pencil, like your blue for example, and stay in the area that's level 6 underneath it, and do some left to right sweeps, that the further away from the ball the sweeps get lighter and lighter. This is called a cast shadow. So directly under the object, it's darkest. The further away from the object, it gets lighter and lighter. It's always darkest underneath the darkest part of the object. So the shadow can't be over here where the light is. It has to be over here. So very heavy left to right sweeps. And then the further away and down, I'm getting lighter and lighter.